It's time for Twig This Week in Google. Jay Rosen joins Jeff Jarvis and Gina Trapani on episode 44. We're going to talk about Facebook's newest privacy controls and whether they're evil. We'll also talk about Google's announcements at Google I/O and much more. It's coming up This Week in Google next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. Cachefly.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 44 for May 26th, 2010. Clown of the Week. This Week in Google is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Bring people across the country or around the world together with the web conferencing tool that's the best of the best. GoToMeeting. For your free 30-day trial, visit gotomeeting.com/twig. And by Carbonite, the leader in online backup. Back up your PC or Mac off-site securely and automatically. For a free trial offer plus 2 free months with purchase, go to carbonite.com. Offer code TWIG. It's time for Twig This Week in Google, the show that covers the Googleverse and the cloud as well. And we've got a great panel lined up for your listening pleasure and viewing pleasure for those of you who watch. Of course, as always, Mr. Jeff Jarvis from NYU and
CUNY.
CUNY. Let's not get that wrong. Let's not get that wrong.
How dare you?
Jay Rosen is also here. He's from NYU. And it's good to have you,
Hello,
Jay.
Everyone. Thanks for inviting me, Leo.
Thanks for being here. I'm a longtime blogger and observer of the press scene, and really somebody I'm really thrilled to get on the show. We've been wanting to get you on for some time, so I'm glad we could finally get you in here.
Excellent.
Yay. And, of course, Gina Trapani from smarterware.org. Hi, Gina.
Hello. Hi.
And Gina and I were talking before the show began about Android development. Because we're both kind of intrigued by this platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll talk.
Java and XML, baby.
Can't wait till you get your Android tablet and replace that closed beast you have now, Leo.
You know, I did that with the iPhone already, right? I'm doing a Nexus 1, and I can't wait to get an Evo. I'm really excited about the Evo. I'm jealous of your Evo, Gina. She got one on at Google I/O. And you've been loving it, haven't you?
I don't normally review handsets, and I feel kind of funny because it was a freebie, but man, it is nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Well, it's that screen, I think, that puts it over the top.
The screen. Yeah, the screen is the thing, right? It's just bigger.
What's better than the Nexus 1?
It's definitely better than the Nexus 1.
Wow.
And it's got this kickstand, which is like, this is my favorite part about the phone. It's got this little flip out thing on the back that you can, you can kind of prop it up on your desk, and you've got, an alarm clock, a desk clock. You can watch YouTube videos while you kind of two-hand your lunch. Like it just makes the phone stand up.
It's almost, it's funny, a little bit more real estate makes it almost a pad.
It does.
And it's not even higher resolution, is it?
No, same screen, but it's just a step below having, a tablet up to your face. You know what I mean? It's just to that point of like,
right.
If it was any bigger, it would feel awkward to your ear. But yeah, it's a really great handset. I'm digging it. Front-facing camera. It's FM radio.
Can you call anybody with that front-facing camera?
I haven't tried that yet. I haven't tried video conferencing.
How would it work?
They got Kik installed. Quick,
QIK. Okay.
Yeah, QIK. Yeah. So you can live stream video, but I haven't actually tried a video conference call.
I think Fring, as I remembered, because I had the front-facing camera on N900. I think Fring does it.
I should try. Yeah, well,
when I get my Evo, I'll get Fring on it, and we'll just call each other.
It'll be fun.
That's the problem. It's like having a video phone. There's only 3 people in the world you can call, but
right,
someday.
Exactly. I mean, the big thing about the phone is that it's 4G, but there's no 4G support.
There's no 4G.
Right. And so, I turned on 4G for 5 minutes, and my battery was practically gone. When I was in San Francisco. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
But to your point, Jeff, I actually am now thinking that what makes the iPad successful is the hardware, and I do think an Android tablet might be a very compelling product. And so, and this is what Gina and I were talking about. I was learning iPhone. I paid $99 and joined the developer program. Was going through the tutorials. And I decided, no, wait a minute. I would prefer to develop for an open platform. And I think if you take you make an Android tablet, from the things that announced at Google I/O between 2.2 and Google TV. Because when you develop for Android, you develop for all of those platforms.
Well, what really strikes me is, and I've said it before, but what the hell, I'll say it again. Mobile, we see the death of mobile. Let's declare it dead already, because it will be the same. Well, because the same stuff will be on all these platforms. You're sitting on the couch, you're not mobile. Watching Google TV, you're not mobile, but you'll be using apps the same way across all these things.
John Doerr at Disrupt, didn't he say that mobile was the third wave of computing? First you had computers, then the internet, and now you have mobile, and now it's dead already.
He said he's trying to name it something new. He said it was a combination of mobile and social and new e-commerce all mixed in together.
I think that's several things, not just one.
I think it is too. It's 3.1.2.3. Yes.
Right, but he's right. I mean, that is clearly where everything is kind of what is happening right now. So let's talk briefly about the Facebook announcements, because as we go to press, to use an ink-stained term, Facebook has just completed its press conference. Mark Zuckerberg and Elliot Schrage taking the stage to explain that they mea culpa, we blew it, again. We were just trying to do the right thing, and we're going to do the right thing this time by simplifying the privacy settings. And now it looks like, although we haven't, it's not rolled out yet, but it will be rolled out in the next, I don't know, week or so, that there will be one-click privacy settings, kind of some defaults, friends only, friends and friends of friends, and public, or everyone. And while Facebook has a recommended, which is, you know, basically they recommend, they would like everything to be public because there's more future for them there. They do give the opportunity of pressing, it looks like, we'll see, one button that says friends only. Does that satisfy you? Anybody?
I have this vision of steel walls coming around you as that happens. Boom, 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 boom.
It's like Get Smart.
No one can see you now. Yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do. It's a meta layer on top of this. You know, the more I think about it, the less, as everyone else is getting more vitriolic about Zuckerberg and Facebook, I'm getting less upset about them. And
you were appeased by their statements today.
I think I was even before that. I think that I do take Zuckerberg at his word that he believes that a connected world is better, and that and it's part of what I'm going to write about in my next tome. But I think he really means that. And all this talk about it being business oriented, well, what isn't? You know, NPR sells ads too.
Oh, we sell ads. I mean.
Yeah, you know, I think they screwed up, and they've made a business strategy of screwing up. And when it was just geeks back when, they could do it. He said today in the press conference that the furor over newsfeed was still many times bigger than this furor. And, you know, then I think 10% of the audience ganged up against him. But, in fact, he was right then. And I think that's what affected him, is that, all right, they yelled, but I was right.
Right.
You know, I don't see the venality in this. Tell me where I'm wrong.
No, I have to admit, I felt a little appeased by this. Jay?
Well, I didn't see the press conference, but I did read the statement. And it seems like if the changes that are described there go through, that will be good. And I think they made some smart moves. But what strikes me, Leo, is I always feel when Zuckerberg is talking and when Facebook is talking to me that I'm being infantilized.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They refuse to treat anyone really as adults. If you look at the rhetoric of this statement, if you look at the way that it's written, there's this funny use of the word "you," where they're telling us, he's telling the users how the users feel and what they wanted in this language of, you said to us that we asked each of you to look and you chose what you wanted, where they're preempting how I think. They're not addressing me as an adult. The other thing I don't understand is, and maybe you guys can enlighten me about this, is Facebook is a company that depends completely on users and good relationships with users. And where is the Facebook ombudsman? Where is Facebook's Robert Scoble back when Scoble blogged for Microsoft? Where is the panel of users who advise them about things but don't work for the company? Where are any of the kinds of measures of openness that you would hope to see in a company so dependent on the goodwill of users? I just don't get it. I don't get any of Facebook's public-facing strategies at all, and I feel like I'm being talked to as a child every time they open their mouths.
Is it anything like the way Apple treats its users? It strikes me lately that I've seen a certain commonality between Facebook and Apple, that they decide what they want to do for business reasons. This is what you were talking about, Jeff. But then, because they don't feel comfortable saying, well, this is good for business, they somehow try to say, but it's what's good for you, too. And that strikes me as what Apple's doing these days a little bit, too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's a slightly different relationship here, though. In the past has been they have a product, you buy it, you don't buy it.
Yeah, Facebook is absolutely in your junk.
Where Facebook
Yes.
is the only choice we have
Yeah.
for our social graph.
Yeah.
And Apple creates just better products that with an emphasis on simplicity. I mean, the whole thing with Facebook is that there are 170 options. And Zuckerberg's, I think he did a piece in the Washington Post. He said, like, we thought you wanted granular controls, but, so we gave you granular controls, but I guess, we were a little too ahead of our time. And that's not exactly what he said, but that was kind of I felt like that was the implication, like, you're not there yet. So we'll dumb it down for you and we'll kind of, usher you along to like the real truth. And that bugged me.
It's when the airline person says, let me explain our policy to you, sir.
Yeah.
I don't want an explanation. I want you to do what I want you to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, listen to this, Leo. Listen to this sentence. Just pitch your ear to this. Unless you feel in control, then you won't be comfortable sharing, and our service will be less useful for you. Do you hear how they're telling us how we think about them,
right?
Instead of telling us what they're going to do and what they want.
But maybe their only crime is a tin ear. I mean, maybe it's just they
could be,
yeah,
or maybe not. I mean, I'm not sure. I've been grappling with intent. It's very hard to determine intent.
It is. But, Jay's point that they don't have very many kind of people within the company who I go to tech conferences all the time. I meet people from Microsoft, from Google especially, and even a couple Apple employees. But I don't know anybody from Facebook. Like I don't know anyone who works at Facebook who's like maybe you do, Leo, who's like writes about, who does kind of better public relations, who explains things like Matt Cutts. I feel like I can go to Matt and get some kind of answer about something that Google's doing, or Scoble from Microsoft. And I don't feel that way with Facebook. I feel like it's this.
Chloe Sladden from Twitter, who's in charge of relationships with the media. Who's that person for Facebook?
All right. Dave Recordin is going to be at Food Camp. I'm going to Food Camp at the end of the month, and that's one of the. I'm hoping I don't want.
Cool.
He may like avoid me like the plague, but I'm hoping I could just sit down in a nice congenial way, because Food Camp is congenial.
Who is the place to do that?
Friends of O'Reilly.
Off the record conversations.
Exactly.
Yes.
So and I'll tell him this is completely off the record. What do you think? What's going on? You're inside. What's your sense of it? So I have to say, after these moves, one thing they did, which I think was really, really good, is they let you completely close off access to third-party applications.
That's good.
This was a huge problem. This Yelp, Pandora, Farmville kind of access to your guts. You can just say no.
Not now, not ever.
Not now, not ever.
And it's future-proof, right? So you say, this is my setting now, and any news partners that you partner up with, you're going to assume that that's my setting until...
They said it.
That's what they said.
They said it.
That's the key to me. Because, opting out one by one as they create new partnerships was just total BS as far as I was concerned.
Right.
So,
can I identify another dynamic here, Leo?
Yes.
And I've seen this in other places in the tech industry, too, is... You have these companies, and they do things that are kind of hard to figure out. And the people who get on to what they're doing first are naturally the pundits, bloggers, techies, early adopters, right?
And they blamed us.
Yeah, and so then what happens is that as that din from the more sophisticated users grows, they try to split off that group from the larger user base and say, well, that's actually just the techies. That's just,
They explicitly did that. They said, oh, no, it's the media and the techies that don't like us. Everybody else loves us.
Right. And so, but if they're making it hard to understand, then the only people who are going to be upset are the people who put the extra effort into understanding.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I never bought that, and was perfectly willing. Yeah, I've been accused of grandstanding and being a publicity hound and so forth, but I was perfectly willing to suffer those slings and arrows because I thought it was important to raise the issue. And by the way, my Facebook account is gone as of now because I deleted it 2 weeks ago on Twig. And I'll be honest, I don't really miss it. So,
yeah, I get that.
It's like, so what? You know?
You know, I'm the same way. I think Twitter replaced the functionality of it to a great extent for me. But you know, one interesting thing about two interesting things about this is I think Jay's right about the ombudsman. I see my editor at HarperCollins, Ben Lonan, just put in Twitter that he likes the idea. I agree.
Yes.
You know, I wonder if what Scoble did wasn't really new. That we in newspapers had ombudsmen, but they were there to act as a kind of a wall more than a bridge in some cases. And Scoble was just a guy talking through the company and creating a human relationship with the company. So there is great irony that it doesn't exist, but the irony further is that I think Facebook operates like a very old company.
Which is ironic, isn't it?
Exactly. The other thing is that at TechCrunch Disrupt, Michael Arrington, who always tries to get numbers out of people, who will talk about, who, by the way, did a really good job. It was a really good conference.
I loved the Carol Bartz interaction. That was hysterical.
Yeah.
I love to talk about that. I watched the video.
Oh, my God.
We'll come to that. But Chris Cox, he asked Chris Cox, head of privacy, I think, right, at Facebook, for numbers on how many have quit and didn't get any. But part of what Zuckerberg said today in his talk was that when 1 million people complained about newsfeed going back in the day, that was a huge proportion of Facebook. But Facebook is now many, many, many times bigger. And so a huge number could complain, and it might be the size of New York, but it's a smaller proportion.
That's one of the things they said today at the press conference was we have this net meter that shows what's going on. We haven't seen anything from these Facebook quitters. I think it's a real problem for them because a bad thing to say, by the way. That's really not addressing it.
Say,
it doesn't hurt our business. Go ahead and quit. See ya.
We don't hear you. We don't care.
That's you don't matter.
Says. Right. You don't matter. You're so small. You don't matter.
That is the problem of success, right? You think that a group doesn't matter, and you can't listen to them. You can't. It's like becoming the public sphere. They're as big as the whole public now, and they've got to recognize the groups within and respect the groups within. And it's a real challenge for them. I don't think they recognize still.
Yeah, I mean, that net meter doesn't show them what the influencers are doing. I mean, Leo's an influencer. Baratunde is an influencer. These are people who are, have great reach and are explaining to the folks who aren't the geeks, what's going on. I don't. That bothered me too.
Yeah.
That, we didn't even feel it.
When Zuckerberg says, as he did in his statement, we've listened carefully in order to figure out the best and next steps. What is this listening process about? Where does it happen? Who is involved?
Where's the
Do we know anything about it? Yeah, where's the ear of this company?
Well, in the prior kerfuffle, Jay, in the prior kerfuffle, they had remember this? I think
they had a page. They had a poll,
and they had people try to write it. And I forget who it was at the time. Maybe it was you, Leo, that suggested a constitutional convention for Facebook.
Yes, yeah, I wasn't me, but that's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, but they're not going to do that.
No. I mean, the ear is, the New York Times made fools of us by pointing out the length of our privacy policy and the fact that, there are 170 privacy options. That's what I feel like it is.
And I'm supposed to believe that nobody at Facebook knew that they had 170 privacy options and that it was a complicated system. And they just, we just took a look at it. And
wow,
it is kind of complicated.
It is bad. You're right.
I just don't buy that.
Well, their argument back is you wanted control. Damn it, we gave you control. You want to leave the vowels out? You can leave the vowels out. They didn't think with any sense. They didn't think like their people.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Enough Facebook. A couple of other things going on. You were at Disrupt, which is the Mike Arrington. I guess it's the replacement for TechCrunch 50.
Right.
In New York City. Nice that it could be out your way.
And that was a beautiful thing. Mayor Bloomberg came and talked, and it was interesting to hear him because he spoke not as a mayor, really, but as an entrepreneur. He was among entrepreneurs. And, of course, there was a mayoral message here, which is entrepreneurs come to New York, follow the light, children.
Yeah, yeah.
And he announced some things.
Do you think that's credible, by the way? Is everything tilting to the left, to the West Coast?
Yeah, you got a problem with that?
It's really interesting to watch Silicon Alley versus Silicon Valley, and
there's a lot of talk about that. It is a different culture, damn it, and I think
which is great.
refreshing and different here. Yeah,
there should be an Austin culture. There should be a Seattle culture. There should be a New York culture. God, if everything were like San Francisco, I would cry for the future of this industry.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about this will go to Jay's heart, I'm sure, but about Arrington, is that he and I were walking down the hall and reminiscing about how we got into a huge fight at an online news association.
You too, huh?
Some years ago. Oh, yeah. And the thing is that Arrington was acting very journalistically through this whole thing. He's asking good questions. He's asking the questions you want to know. He's probing and doing things. He's bringing in the interesting people you want to hear. And he really has his journalism, I think, has matured a great deal. Not that I don't mean by that he's followed the old ways. He does things his own way still, but he's now figured out what his way is, I think, better.
Well, I would agree 100%, and it's very clear that he's started to realize that his job is as a proxy for his audience.
Exactly.
And
he feels that loyalty to do that. He feels that as a mission to do that.
Yeah.
And a great journalist always does.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. And that's a maturation process. This is what happens when people don't go to J school, and they have to learn this in the world of hard knocks. And Mike has taken a lot of knocks, and I think he's really learned from it. This sounds very patronizing. I don't mean to sound patronizing. He's huge, but I would agree with you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I particularly enjoyed that Carol Bart's back and forth.
Yeah,
and you know what?
That's vintage Arrington.
But more power to both of them. I liked her response. She basically said "F you, Mike," which is something I've said, and but it didn't seem disrespectful. I don't know. You were there. Was it disrespectful? It seemed like it was a very nice.
So. It became a joke the rest of the time, but I think it's fun. I mean, listen, Yahoo deserves ridicule.
It does, but she made a good point, which is you're a tiny company. We're a big company. It's hard to move on a dime. I think that was a reasonable point.
There was a great moment today with Nikesh Arora from Google was there, and Arrington played back that line about how Google has to grow a Yahoo every year, and Arora just said, "Well, I don't know what their strategy is. It depends on what what Yahoo's going to be as to whether we have to grow one of them or not." I think that there's a lot of questions about Yahoo, and there's a lot of questions about AOL. Tim Armstrong was there too, and I think tough questioning and tough answering is exactly what we need more of.
I didn't like the interview.
Okay. Tell us why.
There, but I watched it on video. I didn't think it was appropriate for Arrington to start by saying, "How the fuck are you?" And I don't think he would have.
I missed that. I didn't. I only watched the exchange. I didn't see that part.
Wow, that was the first line. Of
well, no wonder she swore at him.
How the fuck are you? Which I don't know. I don't.
No, that's not appropriate.
Like this, but I didn't think he would say that to Eric Schmidt. You know.
No, that's not appropriate. She's known for being kind of foul mouthed, and maybe that was.
I didn't really mind that so much, but
I think it was a license to her then.
Maybe.
Yeah, I didn't. One way I judge an interview is whether I believe the interviewer is asking questions that come out of what he just heard, as opposed to what's on his notebook that he thought of to ask before. And I didn't hear or see Arrington asking questions based on what he heard her saying. I heard him list some of the things that he had already in his notebook. I also wanted him as my representative, as a TechCrunch reader, to ask her about Yahoo's new editorial push. They're hiring all these journalists.
Well, this associated content deal is
associated content also. He didn't ask about that either.
I would have asked about that because that's an odd play.
I'd love to know like what the strategy is.
Well, that's the play. That's the funny thing going on here with AOL versus Yahoo. Is the two last old-style media companies are digging in
to demand media
down to the old media strategy.
To do demand media.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I'm sure you guys consider that anathema to journalism. I mean, it's not, I mean, these $5 bloggers.
That's not exactly our view.
So.
No, is it? Okay, good. This is good. I want to talk about this. Actually, we've had this conversation a little bit, Jeff. In fact, we started one at the end of a show, which I cut off. So maybe we can get back into that. Let's hold that thought, though, for a moment, because we do want to pay a bill because we pay people more than $5. And so in order to do that, I'm going to do a commercial now for GoToMeeting, our friends at Citrix, who make it easy for you to meet online without all that travel, it'll just kill your bottom line. GoToMeeting is the way business gets done these days. We use GoToMeeting a lot. I think we have several GoToMeeting accounts because it's gotten to the point where we frequently will have 2 meetings on at the same time, so we need multiple accounts. If you go to gotomeeting.com/twig, if you haven't tried this already, you can try it absolutely free for 30 days. Here's what will happen. You'll go to gotomeeting.com/twig. You'll sign up. Literally a minute later, probably before I'm done talking, you will have it installed. And now the next time you're on one of those long, boring conference calls, or you're challenged to go across town to meet a client, or across the country or across the world to meet a client, you say, no, let's do a GoToMeeting instead. You can show them your notes, your spreadsheets, your PowerPoint presentation, or your keynote. It's Mac or PC. Any kind of meeting. They now have an iPad app that is so cool. It uses the built-in microphone and speakers on the iPad and the voice over internet that's built into GoToMeeting. You don't even need a phone call. You can just meet. I went out in the backyard using Wi-Fi and I'm having a meeting. GoToMeeting. Try it free for 30 days. gotomeeting.com/twig. TWIG. It is the future, I think, of business. Eliminate all that travel, all that, just expensive pain in the butt stuff, and make those conference calls much more engaging. GoToMeeting.com/twig. We thank them for their support of This Week in Google. So, Jeff, would you tell me what demand media is before we get into this conversation?
Demand media, Jake, probably do a better job, but I'll give it a shot. Demand media does a few things. One is that it listens to search requests to see what the public wants, which I think is a key insight of demand media. That's not the way it works in the news. We decide what the questions are and the answers are. This is a way to listen to that. They listen at the same time to the ad rates and ad demand, and an algorithm spits out a headline. It says that basically if you write something under this headline, you will make money.
I think the example you gave was Harley-Davidson belt buckles.
May have been.
I don't know if it was you, but somebody did. So if you check search keywords and you see a ton of search keywords for Harley-Davidson belt buckles, you say, aha!
And there's ad demand for it. It makes it. Now they tried this with editors, and they found that the algorithm is 4.1 times more effective than the editors at picking winners.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, now, what is a winner, though? A winner means ad sales.
A winner is they're arbitraging Google juice.
Hits.
Right, that's its hits. If you write this the right way, it'll get Google juice, and we know there's an ad demand, and we'll leverage that to the highest value we can.
But it is the two of them together. If there's no ad, okay.
Right. So then they turn around, and the other controversial part about this, the most controversial, is they put it then up in an assignment board, and anybody can come in and write that piece for $20. They sliced up the function of creating content into 11 pieces. So somebody makes $20. A human looks at the algorithm and says, yeah, it's right. They maybe write the headline a little bit. They then write the piece. Somebody copy edits the piece for $2.50, and so on and so on. And it gets up, and it's a machine. And they say they are using, in their words, the spare cycles of writers out there who can earn a few extra bucks. Yeah, it's little money, but it's a resource that's waiting for old print editors to answer queries. So while you're waiting, make a few bucks and do these things. Now, I think that it's, and they're going for an IPO, no doubt. The one thing I think about it is that as search becomes more personalized, as Google gets more signals to location and activity and all that, the ability to play this game of arbitrage on Google juice, I think, is going to go down and down. The dark art of SEO, I think, goes away, and with it, some of demand's efforts. But, again, there's a model here in terms of listening to what people want and then coming up with a structure with outsiders to do it. And there are others doing this. AOL Seed is one. Associated was not doing the same model. Associated.
I thought they were. I thought they were kind of.
No, because Associated, the writer decides what to write. It's the old model. Not as successful.
And they say they have like 38,000 writers.
Right. That's the problem with it, I think, is the business model. But they have so much stuff, and you're motivated. In a sense, it's a manual sense. You're motivated to write things that are going to make money. So you do that. And there are some newspapers now that have hired demand media to fill sections, like I think travel sections and stuff, with stuff. So journalists don't like it mainly because, in their view, it lowers the value of what they do, but welcome to a competitive open marketplace.
They have nothing on Harley-Davidson belt buckles. I just want to point that out.
Yeah. I didn't think I said that.
You didn't say that? Somebody did. I thought that was a really apt, because it's such a narrow niche, and yet there's huge advertising money in it. So anything to add to that, Jay? Is that?
Yeah, well, another way to look at demand media, Jeff's description is good, is to say that they start with the revenue that is available online. And they try to invent the editorial routines that work for that kind of revenue, as opposed to starting with what it costs to have quality editorial workers and trying to figure out how to get the revenue to pay them.
But Jay, it's no different from starting a food section or starting circuits of the New York Times when there was ad demand and then killing it when there isn't.
Yeah, sort of.
Same moral difference.
Sort of.
Which is exactly what happened at the New York Times.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, another way to look
more
at it
efficient.
is because everything that we do online is recorded, because there's all this data about how people use the internet, they are trying to integrate that knowledge into editorial production. That's the part that I feel, and Jeff, I think, agrees with me, is in fact innovative about what they're doing. And that's the part that journalists and news organizations should learn from. But the other thing, this is why I want to talk about it on this show, that really interests me, and I'd love to get Gina's take on this or yours, Leo, is by encouraging demand media to become a big producer on YouTube, for example, and by seemingly allowing them to game search with their kind of low-quality content, it seems to me that Google is kind of shooting itself in the foot, because if this low-quality production routine successfully clogs up Google with content farm produce, how is that good in the long run for Google? I don't see how it's good for Google in any sort of longer-term future.
Well, I mean, so this conversation is interesting to me because when I think about demand media, my first reaction is like, yuck.
Me too. I think it's cynical.
Yeah, but
It
then
is
I think back to my 4 years running Lifehacker, and
That's what
we
you did.
search results all the time.
Sure.
Absolutely. And we tried to write articles that people wanted and that people would
I do
search
the
for.
same thing. I don't watch a
Yeah,
show
I
if
mean,
I don't
we
think
all-
anybody's
we
going to
all do
listen
this.
to it. Of course not.
So
but
the
I do
question-
the
so this-
editorial judgment as opposed to the mechanical.
Right. I mean, this process that we're describing with demand media just does sound particularly kind of awful. But I mean, so the question here is the quality of the content. You know, like Jay was just saying, stuffing the internet with low quality, mediocre content is going to be bad for Google and bad for the internet. But I mean, who judges what's low or high quality content? The fact is, if there's better, Google has to get so good that if there's a better article than a demand media article, then it should be ranked higher in search
Exactly.
results.
That's
And
what
if
Matt
no
Cutts
one
said.
else has written an article about Harley Davidson belt buckles, if the demand media article is the first one that comes up because there's nothing else, that's good for Google, even though it's kind of crappy content.
How does Google do that objectively, not subjectively?
Well, Matt Cutts said on this show that they were looking for two things, right? One is a signal of originality, which is also an issue in news. Right, the 43rd Associated Press rewrite of a story cuts off the links in the link economy to the original Washington Post story. That's kind of unethical. You shouldn't lose the provenance of the original journalism, I think. The old system wasn't set up for that. So Google's going to look for more signals of original content. They're doing that in Google News now, Matt said, where they look, if there are a lot of attributions, the Washington Post said, they'll give more credit to the Washington Post.
Yeah, I think Google has the capability to do this. For sure.
Right, and then they also are looking for signals of quality, and I don't know what those are. Do you have any idea, Gina?
Yeah, I mean, I think that authority, they have this, page rank or some sort of authority ranking, citations, inbound links, reputation over time. I'm not sure. I don't know.
This is
how
interesting.
An algorithm would judge quality.
This reminds me of the free market dogma, that the free market can do everything and will never break. And there's this dogma that PageRank can do anything, that PageRank is an algorithm that no matter what will come up with the best content. And this is a really interesting challenge case because
But demand doesn't depend on PageRank. They depend on
don't they?
Narrowly, not really, because if they cared about that, they would care where they place these things. But on a whole, they don't care.
Oh, I disagree, Jay. I think they do care. They
need to come in first in the search, or they don't make money.
Yeah, they care like About.com. All they did was automate the structure About.com has.
Right.
But why aren't they trying to build this? This is the key to me about demand media. Why aren't they trying to build a brand, demand media, out of what they do?
Because they don't think that will help with Google juice.
They don't
Well,
need
that's
to
my
because
point.
their ads don't come from sales to brands. Their ads come from
They're
Google
automatic.
ads. It's just like about.com.
It's all about Google Juice and nothing else, right? So if reputation doesn't help Google Juice, then they don't need to worry about reputation.
It's the tyranny of good enough. If they're good enough and they know how to game the system,
but this is the test of PageRank. Because if PageRank really is good, it should recognize reputation, authority, and all of these things. But these are ineffable qualities that are very difficult to objectify.
Can I tell you something happened when I interviewed Richard Rosenblatt, the CEO of Demand Media?
Yes.
I asked him, what happens if your algorithm tells you there should be an article on belt buckles that are Harley Davidson inspired, and your other algorithm tells you there's a certain amount of search revenue available for that article, but in order to produce a quality article on that, it costs you more than the available revenue. What do you do then?
Interesting.
Like, what happens? What is the company's philosophy?
Well, you don't do it.
Well, yeah.
You don't do it. You're in business. You're not a charity.
Unable to understand my question. I had to keep asking it.
He understood it perfectly well, Jay.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfectly reasonable question. I
got it.
Woman, but I got it.
He understood your question.
So that's to me is
that's the cynical part.
Yeah, that's the cynical part.
But he's not doing news. I think this is part of the reason they say that they're not doing news. They can't do news. They won't do news.
Right. That's why they don't do news. Yeah.
So and that's their solution. Is they're saying no. They're filling a store shelf.
Right.
With content.
We grew up in an era where news was pro bono, where Edward R. Murrow said we do the news because it's right to do the news, and it was a loss leader for networks for years, but it was the right thing to do.
Right.
That era is clearly dead. All you have to do is watch a network newscast for a minute, and you realize that. It was a false market anyway. It was the price of your spectrum in the day. Right. You had to do it. You had to do it.
Demand Media takes it one step further, which is CBS decided a long time ago that the news isn't a loss leader anymore. The news must profit. But Demand Media pushes it one step further because now the only articles worth doing are the ones that are profitable.
Right.
Which is one step further.
There's no public interest involved at all. There's public interest in the sense that they're interested.
Well, it's no different, though, morally, than this old house magazine.
Right. No, it's fine. I just wonder who's going to cover the story the public isn't interested in but is in the public interest.
We'll train those poor suckers.
I'm counting on you two.
But the other bigger story to me is that you have AOL, is what got us here. You have AOL and Yahoo, each saying they want to be the premier creator of content, the biggest creator of content on the internet. And Tim Armstrong says quality content. And I think that in a new Google world where Google figures out quality, that will matter. But the content business isn't such a great business. The real message of Demand to me is that we're in a world of unlimited content creation, and that's where I think the value shifts to the curator, to the filters.
Well, what strikes me about the demand model is that it isn't pointed at creating trust. And that's what I don't know, is whether editorial brands that are focused on creating trust in the product will be able to realize a market differential over an operation like Demand where trust is not a factor at all.
I love that, because that's exactly what we try to do here. We still make the calculus, though. Can we make money on a show before we launch it? Because it costs money to make a show.
Right. But you aren't asking, are we making money on this 15 minutes?
No. It's a question that actually we've been talking about today. Our salespeople are in town, and it's a big question. But I think that ultimately, I would hope that in the long run, trust and quality would, in the long run, beat these things. Why does Yahoo buy associated content? I
don't know. I would love to know the answer.
That's what I can't figure out. I think they see it as a volume game.
Just more.
The more we have,
more is better.
We'll get.
Well, they're already, by the way, I mean, we talked about this a few months ago, that they're already huge in terms of content volume. They're one of the biggest content companies in the world. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else. The way I put it in a really dorky blog post with diagram I did a few weeks ago is that I think that media, we assumed that brands were the magnet. we came to buy the paper, we come to watch the show, and that's still going to be true to some extent, but through both search and through the human links of Facebook and Twitter and such, and algorithms, all of those means of discovery, the brand instead becomes a label. And once you're there, once you see all these search results on Google, then the question is the brand enough to push you over to click on the second or third link instead of the first one? That's what
I think it's the person. I think it's about people. People come to TWiT to watch Leo.
And you.
And
Jeff.
But like I think it comes down to people. And you know, and I trust Google enough that like I think that if Jeff does a blog post about Harley Davidson belt buckles, that it will beat any demand media article in search results, hands down. Because
and they
you're
can do that.
A trusted blogger who've been doing it for years and years. You have authority as a person. I mean, I think that it's easy for Google to grok, you know, people who have been doing quality work that has consistently, you know, had authority over the course of years versus, you know, some non-brand
algorithmically
non-named freelancers.
Yeah.
Algorithmically,
What's what Clay Shirky wants.
It has to
Clay
be
Shirky
algorithmic.
says the next big challenge is algorithmic authority.
It has to be. Yeah. Reputation and authority are very difficult, but if this is to work, it has to be solved.
It won't be one size fits all, though. That's the key to this.
Exactly. You know, we interviewed the guy who founded Mr. Tweet, which is the presumption of it is that we are going to show you who's got authority. He said, well, to my kids, I have a lot of authority, but I may not to you. It is totally subjective.
Yeah. Right.
And how does Google do that? I don't know. What about Jim Fallow's article in The Atlantic about Google saving journalism? Is this part of that? Is this what Google needs to do to make that effort succeed?
There was no news whatsoever in that piece. Everything in there was old.
Well, that's because you wrote the book, Jeff. Come on, I mean.
But the attitude was new. That's what was important. Is the presumptive relationship of Google to news has been one of hostility and blaming Google for news's problems. And Fallows, I was delighted to see, came and said, whoa, no, they care, and let me tell you what they're doing.
Well, not just Fallows. I mean, Eric Schmidt said, we're all in this together.
Yeah, but he's been saying that nobody
believed him.
Would tend to sneer when they were quoted, and Fallows took him at his word and his level and admitted that they were personal friends in doing so. And I think that's what was important. Yeah. Jay, what did you think of it?
Pretty much the same. It was a tone poem. It wasn't a information-filled article. And I think the way I read it was Fallows was talking to the professional fraternity of journalists and telling them, look, you think you understand Google as a threat to news, but you don't really understand how they think about news. And it wasn't so much informing Atlantic readers about Google, it was signaling to his peers in the profession that they need an attitude adjustment, that their presumption about the company was off.
Gina, did you learn anything? Did you see the piece? Did you learn anything new about what Google's doing in the news?
I'm embarrassed to say that I saw the piece 2 minutes before we started it, and my immediate thought was too long. Read it later.
Very long. Sorry to put you.
Jim Fallows never wrote an article that didn't take a day to read. That's just the way it is.
But I also have to say that I think Fallows is pretty much my #1 guy in journalism.
I've loved him for decades. I mean, I just think he's fantastic.
I would name him the #1 journalist in America.
Wow. That's pretty high praise.
And he's been open about other things. He did a test. I mean, we talked about this on the air once of Google versus Bing. And he, you know, so he, as an old style journalist, he was coming at this new stuff. And he, by the way, he gave up because he kept on going back to Google.
As have we all. Let's talk about some of the announcements at Google I/O, because unfortunately our Twig show was after day 1, which turned out to be not the day.
Not the day.
The keynote, the big keynote was the next day. That's where Android 2.2, where Google TV, and I think some underreported Google announcements. There were so many at Google I/O.
There were.
And there was some stuff that I would like to highlight that maybe wasn't highlighted in the mainstream. So we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that in just a second. But before we do, just one more commercial before we get into that, and it's for Carbonite. My friends at Carbonite. David Friend, aptly named, is a friend. He's the guy who created Carbonite, and we have a little bit in common. Among other things, he started Carbonite when his daughter went off to college. Well, you got Jake going to college in the fall, and I've got Abby going to college in the fall. And, of course, Abby's saying, okay, you're going to get my laptop, right? I said, yeah, but I'm going to tell you, and I may not tell her this, I'm putting carbonite on it before she leaves. Carbonite is backup done right. There's no way at this point I'm going to be able to train Abby to back up her system. It's just not going to happen. She hasn't backed it up all year. She's not going to back it up when she gets to school. However, if I put carbonite on her laptop, and this is PC or Mac, whenever she's within access of the internet, which is probably most of the time at school, and the computer's not busy doing something else, it will back up her files automatically, her personal files, unlimited amount from that hard drive. And whenever she calls saying, Dad, I threw out my thesis, or the dog ate my homework, I could say, oh, good news. Log into Carbonite, and it's all there. And best of all, $55 a year, less than $5 a month for unlimited backup for any PC or Mac. Great for a laptop because they do get lost. They do get stolen. Great for a student, or maybe you, if you're one of those people who just forgets to back up. Frankly, if backup's not automatic and if it's not off-site, I don't consider it a backup. Carbonite is backup done right. Free for you. You can try it. You don't even need a credit card if you go to carbonite.com and use the offer code TWiT right now. 15 days free. Just to give you, and I do recommend this, but don't run out and buy it just because I said so. Try it first for 15 days because it does rely on your upstream bandwidth. And you know what? If you don't have a good connection to the internet, this is not going to be a good choice for you. It also takes a little while to back up if you've got hundreds of gigabytes, and you could on your internal drive these days. It may take a while to back up. You want to understand that. So try the trial. Go to carbonite.com, use the offer code TWiT. If after the trial you say, you know what, I do need this, then what I suggest you do is you use the coupon code TWiT to sign up because you'll get 2 free months, and that really reduces the cost. 13% of hard drives crash in the first year. 43% of people lose files they consider irreplaceable every year. This is from a CMU, Carnegie Mellon University study. Over 600,000 laptops lost or stolen at U.S. airports every year. 600,000. That's 10,000 a week. If they'd all been backed up by Carbonite, there'd be a lot less anguish in the world. Carbonite, backup done right. You got to back it up to get it back. Carbonite.com, use the offer code TWiT. So we were talking before the show, and I said after Google I.O., Gina, I was learning how to write software for the iPad because I'm a hobbyist. I'm never going to write anything serious. I got so excited by the notion of open, by where to Android is going, the notion of an Android tablet, the notion of Google TV running Android apps. They showed an Android app just running out of the box on Google TV. I said, who wouldn't want to write for this platform? You were there. It was a developers conference. Were developers stoked?
They were. I was just going to say, in retrospect, and they kind of proved the point when they launched the Pac-Man thing, is like Google is incredibly good at winning the hearts and minds of developers. I mean, it was just like a wonderland. Every 5 minutes, it was like, oh, there's this other API that lets you do all this cool stuff.
They know their audience. They know their audience. Yeah.
And despite the kind of awkward, nerdy, and sometimes there were problems during the demos, some of the speakers weren't the best, although Vic Condotra was awesome.
Vic is the new Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Vic is the guy. Yeah. But there are some other demos that weren't so good. Still, it was awesome, and the general feeling was total excitement and kind of this feeling of buzz, and definitely this, you'd overhear conversations like, oh, I'm going to take another look at Buzz, or I'm going to take another look at Android, or this phone is really cool. Wow, okay. So yeah, it was a really good conference, and so yeah, I'm excited that you're developing for Android. That is very exciting.
I mean, you're never going to see an application from me, but but
you're trying it out.
It's fun.
I'm really excited about Android now with 2.2.
You won me over. I was fighting against this idea that Android versus Apple and this open versus closed. I was fighting it. I was really fighting it, and I've been won over, and I think it's chiefly by you, Gina, because I've always been a believer. I've always been a believer in open, But I always thought, well, there are times when proprietary and closed makes sense, and Apple, because it's a closed space, could do such elegant things. 2.2, for one thing, is pretty amazing. When I can take my Nexus 1 and turn on Wi-Fi access and turn it into a MiFi for no additional cost, and have all these devices using Wi-Fi off of this. It's great. You can't do that.
That alone saves me $80 or $60 a month.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There.
That's what open does. To me, that's kind of in a nutshell.
Now, Leo, are we really going to be able to do that at no extra cost, or is that going to be a
T-Mobile? I did it. I've been doing it. T-Mobile hasn't said a thing. Now,
T-Mobile, no extra cost.
That's
but,
T-Mobile.
Other carriers, like Sprint, I'm sure is going to.
They charge 30. They charge 30.
An extra 30. Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to depend on the carrier, but right now, T-Mobile's just like, yeah. I mean, it's unlimited. You can do what you want. I mean, it's very slow. The more devices you have.
My question is, how would they know? They would have to get the handset. How would they know? It just looks like more data access to them. They don't know that I'm tethering.
Right. So then, exactly. So these unlimited data plans, are they going to throttle you at some point? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I think Verizon already has a throttle on it, right? A 5 meg.
5 gig. Most have 5 gig. And I think T-Mobile does. Now, I have to say, this is going to hasten something that's bad, which is we're going to start seeing pay as you go, not flat rate plans. It's funny because the same thing happened in the desktop space, where internet service providers have for a long time said, "Oh, we want to charge for the amount of bandwidth they use," and they're starting to do tiering. You know, Comcast has different speed tiers. They are putting caps on. They really don't like all you can eat, and I have to say, this is just going to hasten the death of all you can eat on
with 4G like coming in with really good speeds, people are going to do it more often. So yeah, it'll be much more usable.
There was little talk about this as Disrupt. It really goes to what I keep arguing, that mobile becomes irrelevant, and one panel was pushed on the idea of where does this stuff go. And finally, I think Dennis Crowley from Foursquare said, well, yeah, you'll end up with something that's attached to your head all the time.
Well, that's called a cell phone.
Well, but it's going to be there all the time, wherever you are. And when you have that, you start to ask, he talked about the stuff they did at NYU's ITP, you ask new questions. Who's in this room now? Who do I need to get in touch with? Who knows friends of mine? Who has answers to my questions? What's around me? Ubiquitous connectivity becomes so wholly different. And so I think at some point then, to try to put the clock back on that,
it's hard.
Is going to be really, really hard. It was the guy, I don't know if I mentioned him before on the show, named Tom Evslin. You ever heard of him?
Mm-mm.
He's the unsung hero of the internet. Tom was the head of AT&T WorldNet, and he was the guy who created 1995 flat rate pricing. And first AOL did, and took the ticking clock off the internet, and then's when we started to browse. Before it was tick, 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 tick. Are you still on that damn thing? Tick, tick, tick.
You're right.
Tick, tick. Right? So as soon as the clock went off, look at what exploded.
Very interesting.
For the clock to come back.
So you're saying it would be retrograde to do that, and we can't.
Horribly.
I hope
so. And but it'll be no different from Rupert Murdoch putting his paywall up any day, and he'll learn the hard way.
Right.
We'll suffer because we don't have, you can not buy the Times of London, you can buy 5 other papers in London. Well, we only have.
I kind of had this epiphany because what I realized is that the reason that the PC space exploded, the compute, the desktop computer space exploded, is because it was essentially open. Anybody could develop for it on any platform they wanted, anything they wanted. You didn't have to go through anybody to buy it. And we're going exactly the wrong direction with these closed platforms. It's not good for innovation. And if you want the same kind of explosion that you had in the desktop space on the mobile space, you've got to be open. So
I keep complaining about the idea that apps are going to close down data from things like search.
I thought it was very interesting. John Doerr, when he talked to Charlie Rose at Disrupt, was really saying it's an app world, and he was really, of course, now he's got certain investments that involve apps, so it's in his best interest. And I was saying, no, I don't. It really bugged me. I didn't feel like that's
what scares me.
Yeah,
it really, honestly scares me.
It's too closed.
I think back exactly.
You guys have won me over. I have to say.
At Google I/O, it's an HTML5 world.
Yep.
It's an HTML5 world, and the people with the fastest browsers that can render web content well in a browser are going to win.
That's our best hope.
Yeah.
That is our best hope. Scribd showed amazing work with HTML5 at Disrupt.
Isn't that the coolest thing?
Oh, because it can take a magazine that still looks like a magazine with every fancy font in it, but now the font is seen as a font and it's searchable.
This to me is one of the...
kills the PDF. God bless him.
I thought when I saw this, I thought Jeff's going to love this because it means that anybody can publish in an open way on any platform. It's web browser.
Jared Friedman from Scribd said, they're amazed at how wonderful this is on HTML5, and it only makes them think how the last version was crappy.
Right.
That they didn't know it was crappy at the time. It's quite amazing. So that frees up content to be searchable and linkable again. That's where we got to go with this. That's what we got to fight for.
It's back to the open world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Can I say something about that, Leo?
Go ahead.
I've noticed this dynamic in this tension between open and closed systems where some of the children of openness, people in the tech world who benefited hugely from the web and from the open web, after a while, they begin to think that their own religion, as it were, isn't as savvy and realistic as they want to be. And so they start to turn against it, not so much because they are against it, but because after a while they sort of fear that they're beginning to sound like apostles, like
hippies.
Like hippies, exactly.
Gosh,
exactly.
Darn hippies.
And it's
dirty
the fear.
hippies.
Yeah, and there's this fear of, I don't want to be, I don't want to be with the hippies.
Yeah.
I want to be with cool people, the savvy people.
Right.
And what happens is that then they begin to find appeal in arguments that they used to reject, like, it's too complicated for the users, and people want protection, and maybe in the end that's just the way the internet's going to be. And I just find it really fascinating that after a certain point, the very people who have benefited from openness, in order to be savvy, start to turn against it, and then they start
Savvy
kind
for
of
whom,
they start ridiculing their former colleagues, right, as kind of these clueless hippies who have a religion
they want to be
that
savvy for investors, for stockholders, for fellow
They're
executives.
grown-ups.
I think
they
it's
play-
more self-image than anything else.
You know who's the poster boy for this is Steve Jobs, who is absolutely the ultimate hippie and still thinks of himself that way, but is in fact an incredibly savvy capitalist. I mean, there's no question about it, right? Mm-hmm. And he is totally built an empire. OS 10 is built on open source, totally built an empire on open.
It's true.
And is now saying, okay, thanks, we'll pull the ladder up here.
So will Larry and
See you later.
Sergey grow up?
God, I hope not.
Grown up? Is that the problem?
That's the big question. When I to this morning, by the way, one of the announcements which is so exciting is that there's finally an API for Google Buzz, and you're now already seeing third-party Seismic Web immediately adopted it. You're going to start seeing third-party apps. Gina, can you comment on the API? It looks very nice to me, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I just started actually looking through it this week, and it looks really good. I haven't written anything against it yet, but I'm going to write a think tank plugin for it very soon, so I'll be able to tell you more. I mean, it seems like it's in its beginning stages, but it looks really good, and I'm using it. I think TweetDeck. Does TweetDeck have it yet? No.
TweetDeck Web has it, and Seismic Web has it, but not the apps.
Has it. Yeah, those guys are super fast. It looks really good. I'm just glad. I'm glad that it's out there now. So
people understand the import of this. One of the things that really put Twitter over the top is its third-party applications. In fact, few people use the web to tweet. They use third-party applications. And the lack of third-party applications was severely hindering Buzz, in my opinion.
Definitely. Twitter is like a case study in how to, launch a very simple API that, for better or for worse, I think it was for better, you could authenticate just passing in a clear text username and password just to try it, and having that API front and center, and it was so easy to implement, that developers just jumped on it. And I think other web apps should be, launching with an API that simple and that easy from the get-go, just like Twitter did.
So here's
Gina, do you think that the thing we've talked about before of Twitter now competing with those developers, does that affect Buzz in developers' views? Does this make Buzz perhaps an alternative platform?
I mean, I definitely overheard a lot of renewed interest in Buzz at I/O. But I don't know that was that Twitter necessarily triggered that. I mean, I think that the feeling is just like we can all work together. You have these aggregators like TweetDeck and like Seismic who are saying, here, some of my friends are here, some of my friends are here. It's kind of a bad reality for users, right? Because it's just like fragmented communities of friends across other communities. But it lets developers create products that are open to all, whatever network that you like, and that's a good thing. So I don't think that people are jumping ship from Twitter. I mean, I love Twitter, and I'm kind of
you still tweet
first,
Buzz last.
Yeah.
See, I buzz first, tweet last.
Yeah. But I'm definitely taking a look at Buzz, and especially now that I'm going to do some development for Think Tank too. So. The API certainly will be.
That'll make a big difference. So this morning I'm on Buzz and I thought, well, maybe I'll use Orkut instead of Facebook. And people asked quite reasonably, well, what makes you trust Google more than you trust Facebook? Isn't it all the same?
We keep coming back to that question on the show.
It's a fundamental question, and I don't know if I have a good answer for it. Maybe Jay can help us.
Well, when you decide to trust or not trust, I don't think you look at this policy and that policy. You make a overall judgment about the company in which every interaction that company has with you is factored into your judgment. And the reason I trust Google is not that I'm unaware that they're just capitalists like everyone else. I know that. I know that they put their own interests first. I don't buy, don't be evil. I'm not a victim of their public relations, I don't think. I think instead it's that in the full range of their interactions with me as a company, they justify a certain amount of trust more so than other companies that I deal with. And that's what I don't understand about Facebook. Facebook is never actually does anything as a public-facing company that causes me to trust it more. It just doesn't. It doesn't have any ear for that whatsoever.
Jay, let me ask you this. When Gina described how developers were walking around all excited saying, "Oh, I'm going to build things on this and this and this," my dream is that a news company should be operating the same way as a platform. And that relationship and that mood is what we should have, and our culture doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Facebook at the same time has the same developer community building tons of apps, but it just seems such a different, even with just developers alone, it's such a different ethos now.
Well, Jake, your son was a Facebook developer. What's his attitude these days?
He thinks that people have been overly harsh on Facebook, and that he kind of gets what they're doing. And, the problem was simple to him. They were too granular. Okay, now they have something simpler. All right, let's move on.
Will he continue to develop for Facebook?
I think now we got to wait till the last finals are done. But I think, I think he's also interested in Android.
I'd be very scared to develop for a platform like Facebook. I mean,
I think that's part of the issue now.
You don't know, you're really out of control.
Jake gets it. I mean, Jake is younger than all of us, and he's Facebook was part of his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a way that it probably, I assume, wasn't part of any of our lives. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he trusts it because it's like the telephone that he uses to call his friends. All of his friends. So it's kind of different. So I can see him having, being a lot more forgiving than we are. I mean, I never really quite was embedded in Facebook the way I have been in Twitter. Or
but even as a developer, but look at that subset, that public for each company. You have the developers now, I think, trusting Facebook less than Google and trusting Facebook less than Twitter, even though Twitter has recently gone in competition with them. Is that fair?
I wasn't at F8. I would love, and I really don't know very many Facebook developers. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think that the notion is that Facebook has all the users. They have the social graph, so you can build things that connect people to their friends easily. I mean, I think it was really exciting for Pandora and Yelp and all those partner sites to build those things. I mean, I think some developers got really excited about writing apps that showed you how not private your profile was, or like all the people who were going to a strip club and had no idea that you could search their status updates. I think there was some excitement there, but that's just kind of like the zing gotcha, of the kind of particular part of a developer community. But I mean, I would say the developers trust.
There's also a good group. There's a large group of developers who will go where the money is. So
yes.
They may not love Apple, but they love the revenue potential. They may not love Facebook. I mean,
this is what people say. Oh, you want to develop for Android? Go ahead. We'll take all your money. Like, this is like, we'll take all your revenue, which drives me wild, by the way, because you can sell apps in the Android market. And now that Leo has shamed me into the fact that all of my apps are free, I buy Android apps now.
I buy all my Android apps.
On App Brain. Yeah. And there are lots of apps that I actually wish I could buy that are just free.
Like to support,
Yeah, I mean, it's true that the open source culture does emphasize free. That is true. But yeah, so there definitely is this perception that the App Store or the iTunes Store is where you go if you want to make money. But I think that is total BS. I think people make money on open source software all the time. I have my full-time job is developing an open source project.
Right.
There's ways to make money, that
Well, and Android is a mix because I mean it's a commercial. I mean it's open in the sense you can develop for it, but it's certainly on commercial platforms. People buy the phone, they buy the service. There's money being exchanged. I don't think that it's somehow some magic, money.
This is. I go back to what I was asking Jay. I think this is exactly what should be going on in the news industry. Is that when we push newspapers to think of the blog network around them, they should be looking at them as Google does developers and Facebook does developers. How do we make them succeed? If they succeed, we're better off. Life is cheaper for us. They'll spread our message. They'll spread our software. But
the Guardian is way ahead on this, Jeff. I mean, did you check into what the Guardian is doing with their API now?
What are they doing?
Well, they just announced an open Guardian program in which not only do they let you have access to almost all their data, but they'll build businesses with you, and that's how they hope to make money. Is they will either give you a syndication deal if you use their content, or they'll do a revenue sharing thing with you. But they expect people to build businesses on what they publish, and they're trying to make it as easy as possible to do that. And they are all in on open. That's basically what it comes down to.
I love it because now you have something to compare against Rupert Murdoch.
Yes, absolutely. And Emily Bell, who's soon to depart and compete with Jay and me when she goes to Columbia University, who's the head of digital there, has said it well, that the Guardian sees they need to be part of the fabric of the web. It's this idea of trying to get people to come to a brand as a magnet doesn't work for them anymore, and they've got to go where the people are. And the developers can take them.
Meanwhile, it's becoming clear to me that the New York Times is going to try and do something hybrid. It's not really correct to call what they're doing a paywall. I think that they believe that a lot of people will pay for the Times voluntarily, and they're clearly going to design their metered system so that if you really don't want to pay, you won't have to. And it's not what a lot of people thought originally. They're not really going down the same route as Murdoch, but they are also not going down the all-in on open route of The Guardian.
Boy, this is such a great discussion. I hate to cut it off, but we're running out of time. I think we got to do our tool and tip and number of the week. But can we do this again next week?
Yeah, this has been great.
I just find this so fascinating. There's so much more to say about Google I/O. We didn't really talk about Google TV, and one of the little things I loved was the support for fonts.
Yeah,
I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of those little API things. You're like, oh, better web pages for everybody.
Yeah, just so many little things like that came out of Google I/O. It's just, I don't know if Google's evil or not, and I guess it's a silly thing to even ask the question, but I like where they're going. I really like what they're doing.
I think the fact that they ask is the key, Leo. The fact that they give license to their employees to question the company and try to define evil every day there. At TechCrunch, I got into an Arrington moment where I was in line, and the question I wanted to ask Chris Cox from Facebook, somebody got up and said, "Is Facebook evil?" and sat down. And I said, "No, what I want to ask is..."
No, next question.
What's your definition of evil?
Yeah, there you go.
And that's the key is, what's the thing that you have to do to maintain the trust of your public? Say that, and then that gives principle to everything else. And Zuckerberg started to say it in his Washington Post piece. I don't think he rose high enough, which I think was Jay's complaint too.
That was a piece of crap, that piece.
That's another way to look at it.
Mark is not the guy to explain what he's up to. Clearly.
Neither is Elliot Schrag.
Nor is Elliot.
No.
Definitely.
You hit the nail on the head, Jay, when you said they need an ombudsman. They need a public face.
Somebody who's at least funny and charming.
Yeah.
Serious.
I'll do it for $50 million a year.
No, you wouldn't.
I'd have to think about it. That's a lot of money.
But you wouldn't do it.
No, you're right. I wouldn't. I don't know if I could face myself in the mirror in the morning.
You need mirrors when you got 50 million.
Well, that's my point.
That's like the old advice: if you can sell out, you should sell out because you will sell out.
Oh,
and
that's good.
If you can't, you won't.
Do you tell your students that? I like that.
Yeah, if you can sell out because you will anyway.
Eventually, they're going to get you.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people can't sell out. That's the point. and they don't.
So I think I could sell out. I don't know. I'll have to check. That's my wife. Jay Rosen is a professor of journalism at NYU and just a great guy to have on this show. Please come back.
Thanks for having me.
Follow him on Twitter. It's at jrosen_NYU. And his website is you have to do the www, by the way, www.pressthink.org if you want to read more of his stuff. And Jay, if you want to stick around, do, but it's time right now for Gina's tip of the week.
This is a really simple one. Next time you're in a coffee shop or on an open Wi-Fi network and you have to search for something kind of embarrassing, like,
I love it. I'm so glad you did this. I forgot. This is huge.
Cures, tochi, corn, whatever.
Yeah.
Add an S after the HTTP when you hit google.com. They just launched Google searches over an encrypted connection, so https://google.com, and all your search terms will be encrypted over the wire. So if you're on an open network, people can't see what you're searching for.
Will
on
it still
Google.
be in the history, Gina?
No. No. It's completely blank, isn't it?
I think it's still in the. I think it's still in your history,
web
unless
history.
In your computer's history.
Not that it matters. My life is an open blog.
Of
and I
course
don't care.
it is. Of course it is.
Unless you're, in incognito mode or
Just
secure
advice
search.
to our secretive users.
But yeah, if you use Chrome, which by the way is all I use now, they've now released the Mac and the Linux version.
Right, those are out of beta. Yeah, you can go in incognito mode, which won't save things to your history. So if you use the encrypted version, no one on the network can see what you're searching for, and it won't be in your history. And actually, Matt Cutts did a nice write-up about how difficult. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's kind of a difficult feature to roll out. For a company like Google, it's got so many servers, and so that's linked on the Friendfeed. And also, if you want your Google searches to default to HTTPS all the time, there's a Firefox add-on that will do that, and I believe a way in Chrome as well to do that. So anytime you hit google.com in the search, it'll just redirect to the HTTPS version, and those are linked in the Friendfeed.
To me, this is a perfect example of Google not evil. This harms their ability to track what you're doing. It's private surfing.
Doesn't really. They still have a record of what you're doing there, don't they?
They would still have a record, right? But no one in between. So your ISP, you're the router. You know what I mean? So it prevents people from sniffing your searches.
Okay.
While you're on a network. So, but Google still has the because it hits their servers and they decrypt it, right? They decrypt their request on their end.
Well, I'm going to give you my tool will be something that proves Google's not evil. But first.
Okay.
But and by the way, HTTPS searches from now on. That's awesome.
Yeah, right. Just for the principle of it.
Just for the principle of it. Yeah, it's like encrypt all your email just because you can.
Yeah. Yep.
Heck with you, cable company.
Well, that's what I've always said. When people talk about privacy, say, well, who knows everything? Your internet service provider.
Yes.
They see everything you do. Yeah. Are you worried about them? They've got a box in there the FBI put in there.
Google.
Yeah.
That's why you use SSH tunnels and VPNs, kids.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And now only the Google will know. Our number of the week, Jeff Jarvis.
Numbers. That's the obvious one that I had to do, of course, is that the Pac-Man wasted, according to Rescue Time, 4.8 million hours of time, which added up to a $120 million of productivity, which also shoots down Google's announcement this week that they did a study and found that they believe they've added $54 billion of economic activity for American businesses. And one little just note on that, just from a higher level here. I think it's interesting that they've added up what they feel businesses have made because of Google. There's some argument in some quarters that, well, they would have made it anyway. I think that's beside the point. But to me, there's another economic impact of Google and the internet that's huge, which is how much money we save, the internet dividend. That's what's throwing the economy into craziness now, I think, because innovation doesn't necessarily yield growth. It yields efficiency now, economic efficiency now. And that's a huge impact on the economy, but we don't know how to measure it because we always measure growth. So anyway, Google came out with $54 billion, then took some of it back with wasted efficiency, but I think also causes untold, uncounted efficiency in the economy, and so I think it has an even bigger impact. And by the way, Pac-Man is now permanent at google.com/Pac-Man.
With full-on gender equality, by the way. Ms. Pac-Man on the 2-player. Yay.
If I joined the show, I would add Clown of the Week.
What's the Clown of the Week?
The tip of the week, the number of the week, and the clown of the week.
Oh, you will be the clown of the week.
Should we
No,
guess?
I will. If I were a regular on the show, each week I would come to you. With
Do you have a
who
nominee?
clown-
Who's your nominee?
Yeah, Kara Swisher.
Oh, wow. Okay, Kara's going to be on TWiT this week. Tell me why she's the clown of the week.
Well, I got highly annoyed with her last night because she published a post about Rob Glazer getting a new job as a venture capitalist.
Yeah, he quit Real Networks shortly. A short while
Booted
ago.
from Real Networks or quit
Or whatever, something.
And I just felt that as a journalist, if you write about Rob Glazer and you do not mention that his product, Real Player, was one of the most hated products on the web ever, and that it was almost the definition of bloatware, that if you just pass over that, you're revealing yourself as an industry-centric journalist, and you don't have users in the center of your consciousness when you're writing that, because from a user's point of view, that's who Glazer is.
Well, maybe
He's the
she
guy-
assumes we all know that.
Well, maybe, but there are a lot of things in that piece that we all would know. Anyway, I was very annoyed by that. So
I should, from now on, when I say Rob Glazer, comma, the
Real
jerk
Player
who
guy.
brought you Real Player, comma.
Jerk who brought you Real Player.
why not? That's what I would do. Absolutely.
Well, I should disclaim this a little bit. Rob was a college classmate of mine, and I know Rob somewhat. And but I agree with you.
When
he
when he repents,
when he
you know,
repents, he
then
did
we can stop saying it.
he did inflict a nasty thing on us all.
Thank you.
Yes, I will buy that. Now, I really should make my tool two tools. One, of course, is that Chrome is now out on all three platforms, out of beta. And I have to say, because of for a long time, I continue to use Firefox just because of the rich set of extensions available. There is a very rich set of Google Chrome extensions out now. And I would say that Chrome has parity in that respect. And my God, it is so much faster and better and lighter. And I just love Chrome.
I did something really stupid, Leo. I saw, it's out. So I downloaded it, installed it, and realized that I'd installed the old beta. Of course, Chrome had already updated for me.
Yes. Some might say that's not a good thing, but I like it.
Yeah, it's fine. So I double installed it, but I'm fine now.
I like it. It's the easiest upgrade and install in history.
So before you do anything, folks, look at your version.
You probably have
probably up to date.
Yeah. And anytime I install Linux, the first thing I did was put Chromium on there. And now maybe you can clarify this for me. Is it still called Chromium, or are they going to call it Chrome now going forward in Linux? Do you know, Gina?
I think it's Chrome. I think
Chrome.
Chromium is the open source project, right? And then Chrome is the Google product. So
Okay.
I believe that they're calling it Chrome on Linux. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I'll go get Chrome. I don't know. I use
Yeah.
Chromium. I mean, I don't know what their difference is. It seems to functionally identical.
Yeah, it is.
Pardon me?
I have to go.
Okay, Jay. Thank you. Great to have you on, Jay Rosen. Oh boy, when he went.
Jay's a determined man. Yes.
Well, and he's right, because I've been dawdling, and here it is. This is my tool of the week, and this shows that Google is not evil. The Google Analytics opt-out browser add-on. Ladies and gentlemen, if it bugs you that sites like mine collect analytics, which we do, you can now opt out by just adding this browser add-on, available not only for Chrome, but for Internet Explorer and Firefox.
Whether you twit like it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no business case for them to make this.
There's no business case, except that maybe try and win goodwill.
Mm-hmm. Well, right.
And some journalists said, oh, well, this is in response to complaints about privacy from the EU and so forth. I don't know. Maybe it's proactive, but just seems like this is a kind of thing a company does that says, okay, you don't want us to do this, we won't do it. Mm-hmm. I like it. I can't see Facebook ever releasing something like this. I'm going to opt out, Facebook. The Google Analytics opt-out browser, just search for it, tools.google.com. And it's called GAO output. You could opt out, rather.
Leo, I forgot the other numbers I should have done real fast.
Yes.
Google released the AdSense share this week. They've been saying since January they were going to do it, and they did, and they give 68% of revenue on content ads to the publisher's site and 51% of search to the publisher.
They're telling people now.
They're telling people that. Italy kind of wanted it, but they said since January in Davos, when I asked about this, among other people asking about this, of course, that they were thinking about doing it, and they have now revealed that. They've not revealed the YouTube split because they say it's too new, or the game split.
Right.
They've revealed this.
You're never going to pry the amount of money I give back to you guys out of me, so I'm pretty impressed. I'm impressed. They're less evil than I am. Let's put it that way. That's really really good news. That's really great stuff. And by the way, Google was applauding when Apple bought what is the other company, because it meant that Google didn't have a monopoly with AdMob, and in fact, they got approval now from the FTC because of it.
Another reason to write apps for Android.
They got ads.
They're going to make money.
In fact, that ad platform looks surprisingly like iAds, I have to say. It was almost identical. Hey, thanks for being here. Jeff Jarvis is, of course, the author of What Would Google Do? You must buy it and read it and understand. He also blogs at buzzmachine.com and is a professor at CUNY. I'm going to get it right this time in journalism at the City University of New York. Does that make you an arch rival?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
But we're good friends. Our daughters are good friends. We have barbecues together.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Our daughters are the same age.
Oh, how sweet. That's
cool.
Great. Gina Trapani, who is much beloved by geeks everywhere, is the blogger who created Lifehacker, continues to blog at smarterware.org, and is the author of The Complete Guide to Google Wave. Now, much more interesting, thanks to Google, anybody can
get in.
Yay.
Yes.
And I'll be very interested. We didn't really talk about Wave in the Google announcements. Maybe next week we can do that.
I used Wave to interview Scoble for my book.
Did you really?
Oh.
I think that's a perfect use for it.
Interviews.
I thought Gina would be proud of me.
Yeah.
Yes, I am proud. The heart swells.
isn't that
Thank you for telling me that.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Google.